TCI is brought to you by Northern Afleet, standing at TaylorMade Stallions, sire of 5 millionaires and 6 Grade 1 winners. Find out more at northernafleet.com.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Breeders' Cup. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. You know, we're only 3 weeks away from the Breeders' Cup, and today we're going to jump into some divisions. We're going to look at some preps that we think were very influential and could really have a major impact on the Breeders' Cup. Joel, I'd like to start off with the turf sprint and start off at Keeneland because Bridgetown, very impressive in the Woodford.
Yeah, absolutely, John. The local prep here on October 6th at Keeneland. You know, Bridgetown's a horse that has always been very talented. He's always been a top-class North American turf sprinter, but he sort of had some bad luck along the years. You know, we know he's a good 2-year-old. He's still good at 5, and he was good in between, but he sort of had some setbacks along the way at key times. But if we go straight to the Woodford footage here on the Twin Spires TV race replay, and we hit the play button here, as they're coming off the far turn, what's the first thing you notice? Bridgetown's normally a fast horse. Well, here he is coming from off the pace, John.
Right.
Great Mills, a pretty good turf sprinter, is on the lead here. And then we all know Chamberlain Bridge. He's a class horse. Obviously, one of your defending winners of that Breeders' Cup turf sprint. I like the way he was able to overcome setting off the pace, making that sort of style change to run down a horse like Great Mills and hold off another horse like Chamberlain Bridge. That's a classy group, John. That's a good prep coming into the Breeders' Cup. It looks like he's back on top of his game. And we know he likes Santa Anita. I talked about how good he was at 2. He was your runner-up in that juvenile turf after leading all the way around. So that 6.5 furlong distance he has to stretch back out to should not be an issue for Bridgetown. I like the fact that he can stalk, or if it's a slower pace, he can show his normal style, which is going to lead. So to me, Bridgetown, off of that key race where he was able to settle in the Woodford, to me, he's your horse to beat in that turf sprint.
All right, let's go to the next division, and let's stay on the turf, but this time let's go to Canada because there's an undefeated filly up there. Her name's Spring Venture, and Joel, she looks like she's on top of her game.
She's a very good one, John. If you haven't heard of Spring Venture by now, I think you will very soon. Here's the Natalma Stakes at Woodbine. We'll take a look at this race, and I think Stephanie's Kitten came out of this race, won the juvenile fillies turf, you know, a couple starts later, so we know it can be a key race, especially at Santa Anita, where the turf is typically firm, which the Europeans don't like. Here's your filly to watch right here, coming up the inside. Chestnut filly with the black blinkers on, green silks. You see he's hitting her left-handed there, but once she draws clear here and hits full stride, she's basically eased up under the wire. Look who your runner-up is here on the far outside in the Oxley silks. That's Spring in the Air. Look how easily she beat her on the wire, easing up at the end. Spring in the Air came back to win the Grade 1 Alcibiades, and I know that was on Polytrack, but it just shows you the class and the quality coming out of this Natalma field. I think she's your champion 2-year-old filly, John, and I think in a mile on the turf, she can beat the Europeans. There'll be a handful of them coming over, but this might be your filly to beat in that race.
All right, let's go now to the filly and mare turf, and here's another filly that you and Ed have both been very high on. Of course, I'm talking about Marketing Mix.
Yeah, Marketing Mix. I mean, we've talked about her a lot. I like the fact she had a local prep, and I just like the way she's been campaigned. You know, she showed at the end of her campaign last year as a 3-year-old how talented she was. They put her away, you know, brought her back at 4, and she's even gotten better. You see her here. She's already made the lead under Garrett Gomez. And, you know, this was a Grade 1 in Southern California at Santa Anita at that 10 furlong distance, but we knew she was much better than this group. She beats them easier here. What I like is how Garrett Gomez was able to save something there. Like I said, I love the way that Tom Proctor's campaigned this filly this year. I still think she could be sitting on her best race. That's why I like her. There's some other fillies in this division that have been sort of hard used throughout the year. Here's a filly to me that could be sitting on her best race, loves the trip, loves the track. I think on a firm course, she could beat the Europeans.
All right, let's go now to the mile. And Joel, of course, we have to talk about Wise Dan. He's all the buzz. You know, there's some questions. Will he run in the mile or will they put him in the Classic? Sure. You know, I want to go to Keeneland. I want to look at the Shadwell Turf Mile because this is a race you thought he'd have to run another A-plus performance to win. Joel, I thought he won pretty easy.
The reason we're showing this race was we talked about how deep of a group it was from top to bottom. So we know it's a key prep. You see Wise Dan here putting away Dominus. I mean, he just runs away from this group. But pay attention here. There's another horse that I liked out of the race. And that's Double's Partner. He's a 2-horse down on the rail here. He hasn't run since Derby Day, John. White cap, having a dive to the inside there. He's a horse that had a trouble trip. You know, earlier in the year, he should have won the Maker's Mark. He had a trouble trip in there as well. I like that race for Double's Partner. Coming off a layoff, he's going to be tighter next time out. Nobody's going to think he can win the mile, especially after Wise Dan dominated him here. But watch out. If there's a lot of pace up front and they back up, Double's Partner is an interesting closer in that mile for me. But Wise Dan definitely is where the race starts. And what's interesting, there's a lot of interesting matchups in the Breeders' Cup. Wisedan versus Acceleration is a very interesting one to me because I think, there's a European for Coolmore that he hasn't been able to run with Frankel, but he's probably the second best miler in Europe. We know their turf horses and milers are typically better, but we have a good one in Wisedan. That's an interesting showdown going up to the mile.
All right, you've talked a lot about the Europeans. Right now we want to bring back a popular segment to the show. It's the question of the week, and it's brought to you by WinStar Stablemates. And it's funny you talked about the Europeans because Leanna Packard, she has a question for you.
Hey TCI, this is Leanna Packard from WinStar, and my question for you all is, given the expanding number of winning your in races internationally, how many foreign horses do you think will actually attend this year's Breeders' Cup, and what do you think their chances are?
Leanna, that's a great question. I really like what the Breeders' Cup has done, John, in terms of the challenge races on foreign soil. There's over 30 of them now, and they're not just in Europe, and they have them in Japan, a lot of places in the Southern Hemisphere. I think this year you're going to see mostly Europeans coming over, but I think going forward, the whole travel stipend, paying the way for the winners, the challenge winners to come over and compete and really make this a worldwide event, I think that's going to pay dividends in the future. They've had a little bad luck this year. Horses like Dane Dream, Snow Fairy, horses that have come up with late season sicknesses and so forth, setbacks that aren't going to allow them to come to the Breeders' Cup, but we're still going to get great horses. St. Nicholas Abbey, defending winner in the turf, he'll certainly be tough. Acceleration, we talked about him. He'll be tough for Coolmore in the mile. So we always know the 2-year-olds are going to be good. So yes, there will be a lot of talent coming over, but I do like this Breeders' Cup Challenge system and the fact that there's so many of them worldwide now. I think it's going to pay dividends in the future.
All right, great answer. And that was a great question, Leanna. You can submit your question by visiting WinStarStablemates.com and look for the question of the week box. You can submit your question either by video or send us an email. Either way. Joel, thank you so much for your input today. And thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We have pre-entries coming out on Wednesday.
Betting the year's biggest races is easy and fun at TwinSpires.com. You can play from home, online, or by phone. There's even a $100 sign-up bonus. So bet the Breeders' Cup at TwinSpires.com, where players win.